for 3 minutes.
Well, okay.
I'm going to give it to you. I'm going to give you 3 minutes.
I was asked when I first showed up how much time I needed. And I said, 10 minutes ought to be enough, and she said, fine. So I was told I had 10 minutes.
Well,
and if anybody here has a problem with that, you can tell me now. But I wanted to provide some context for the water and concrete-based issues at this
I have a
plant.
small problem with that, because if I give you 10 minutes, then I won't be able to get to everyone. And I want to get as many people as possible.
You said there were only 12.
Well, there were 12 originally, but then I got 6 or 7 more after that. Now they're 18.
Okay, so what would you like from me?
3 to 4 minutes.
How about 5?
3 to 4 minutes. Please.
All right. All right.
Thank you.
So you all are not going to hear very much from this, but I want to hold this up for you all to see. This is a document of the Employees Legal Project, which is a compilation of allegations made by whistleblowers from the Seabrook Nuclear Power Plant during the period of their construction in the 1980s. And I had highlighted areas in this report because they relate specifically to concrete and water and allegations of poor construction all through this plant. And I'm going to just read one of them right at the top. Cement was poured in below freezing temperatures. Cement was tested and rejected as improper mixture by a safety inspector and subsequently poured. Empty beer cans and bottles were discarded in the wet cement. Superficial patches were applied to major cracks. Steel rods designed to support the containment wall were improperly severed at the second-story level of the reactor to simplify the construction process. And that specific allegation, I know, was made by this gentleman, Grafton Burke, who was a cement finish tender at the Seabrook plant, who was the only person among the people involved in the construction and the on-site inspector at the time who was willing to come forward and file a non-compliance, and it was accepted and validated by the NRC as the only non-compliance of construction procedure at Seabrook during the time of its construction. All of the concrete, all of the reinforcing rods for the concrete at elevation 25 inside the Seabrook containment were cut during the construction. So we'll put the big books down and I'll get on to my questions. But there's a lot of context here. This goes back for many years. So I came to this meeting tonight understanding that at least in one case with one test, there was a, noted by the NRC, a 21% reduction in compressive strength of the concrete of a specific building. And I understand, talking with the on-site inspector, that that's now a contested number. But until and unless we can see the evidence that proves that that number is false, I think we need to continue with that number. So I'm going to go on with my question. If in 20 years we see a 21% reduction in certain concrete within certain buildings, and that's halfway through the license, can we then estimate a linear decrease over the next 20 years in compressive strength? In other words, are we going to see a 42% loss in compressive strength in those buildings and now show 20%? Or is it perhaps more likely that we will see a cascading effect? In other words, the permutation of ASR through the concrete could cause an acceleration of weakening of the concrete. At a 50% loss of strength, is the atomic plant safe to reboot for another 20 years? In other words, should this issue not impact the relicensing? And what about a 60% loss if 50% is not enough? At what magnitude of loss of strength does the NRC feel compelled to pull the plug on this nuclear plant? That's one question. For the sake of public safety, a concern to which the Nuclear Regulatory Commission is ostensibly devoted, is it not the case that the loss of strength of concrete must be considered in concert with the seismic vulnerability of the seacoast? In other words, these two issues should be considered together. They can't be considered separately. And for the purpose of protecting the public, should not the possibility of earthquakes be considered from a worst case standpoint, since the magnitude of seismic events is so unpredictable?
I'm not done yet, but
Well,
how about that for start?
that's 3 minutes. Chris, do you want to take that one?